Good evening, Faith family. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Donna Johnson. My husband Chad and I, along with our youngest daughter Lacey, moved to this area 3 years ago next month from Norfolk, Nebraska. For my message this evening, I'm going to turn the clock back to when we lived in Minnesota. During our time there, Jesus introduced me to two wonderful women. Their names are Heidi and Kathy. These gals both worked at my school, and they loved the Lord. They wanted to share Jesus with some of, we called them teacher mamas up in Minnesota, because all of us were moms and teaching and busy, and they wanted to share Jesus with us. So every week we would meet for a Beth Moore Bible study, and it was just amazing. During our time together, these women taught me even more about loving Jesus, reading the Word, and applying it to my life. Spending years with these women helped me to shape my Christian values. They taught me the power of prayer and the importance of trusting the Lord. I would not be the person I am today without the love and support these two women poured into me and my fellow colleagues each week. In April of 2016, after being a part of our community for 13 years, Chad and I decided that he would take a promotion with his company and transfer to Madison, Nebraska. We had decided not to share this information with our children until after the school year ended. Our oldest daughter, Chelsea, was completing her junior year at Oklahoma State University. Seth was finishing his junior year of high school, and Lacey was finishing 4th grade. As you might imagine, it was a shock to our children, and our son was not at all happy with the idea of having to leave his school, classmates, and teammates going into his senior year. It was a very emotional conversation, and I did not want to do this to him. I also did not want Chad to have to spend a year in Nebraska without us, and us without him. So right then, I said, this decision is bigger than me. I will not decide between staying here or going. I have to give this to God. If he wants all of us in Nebraska, he will give Mom a teaching job in Nebraska. And if he wants us to stay here, then I won't get a job in Nebraska. Seth said that that wasn't fair, to which I replied, buddy, most schools have already hired their teachers. You know, by the time end of May happens, if you know anything about schools, they've got everybody lined up ready to go. So I told him I didn't think it would be easy to get a job. That day in May, Chad said our deadline would be August 1st. By August 1st, we would have our decision. If God gives Mom a job in Nebraska, we all go. If he doesn't, you guys will stay and we will make it work. Well, before we knew it, June had come, and I had been checking the Teach in Nebraska website daily for any elementary positions that would be in the area, and there were none. I was in shock. About mid-June, there was a kindergarten position that would have been perfect. I felt very confident as I went into the interview. I had taught kindergarten for 16 years, so I thought it was mine. However, I was heartbroken to get the call that they had chosen someone who was already on staff to fill that position. But then I remembered that it was God's decision, and he would bring me to the place where I was to be. It says in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That became my verse. I taped it to the mirror in the bathroom so I would see it several times every day. A week later, there was another job I applied for. I got an interview, and I was also turned down for that position. About that time, we decided to put our home on the market because we figured, it'll probably take a while, and then we would purchase a home in Nebraska when our house sold, and then, move forward with wherever God had placed us. The big shock came when our home sold within 2 weeks. Where would we live if we ended up staying? In our little town of 1,200 people, there were not many options. So again, I had to remember my verse, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. After a bit of searching, we were able to secure a small apartment above the post office. Okay, so side note, I didn't write this down, but my only thing that I said about that place is, you know what, if I end up living here, my legs are gonna be awesome, because it was like 20 stairs to get up to the apartment. Anyway, sorry. So I was able to share our circumstances with the owner, and he was willing to wait until August for our final decision. Summer was flying by, and we were nearing the end of July. On Sunday, July 24th, Seth and I, along with our church's youth group and pastor, were preparing to leave for the Higher Things Youth Conference in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Before we left, Chad said, "Be sure to keep checking the website. I have a good feeling." To which I said, "Chad, we're done. We have a week. There's no way this is going to happen." And he said, "Just keep looking, please. God's got this." So off we went. We joined a busload of kids from Rochester when they stopped in Worthington, and we were on our way. The conference was amazing, spending time with the youth, many of whom I had taught in kindergarten. And while we were there, we attended speakers and worshiped together, and it was amazing. Well, the week was flying by, and it was already Wednesday when I finally kind of had a break and got to my room and figured I better check that Teach in Nebraska website. Otherwise, I would have to go home and lie to Chad and tell him I did when I didn't. So I figured I better do that. Well, I pulled it up, and I couldn't believe what I saw. There was a position teaching second grade at Christ Lutheran School in Norfolk, Nebraska. Well, I called the number right away. The principal answered the phone, and as you can tell, I'm a little bit nervous right now because I tend to get that way if I have to talk in front of adults. Kids, no problem. But I was amazingly calm as we visited. I had told him of my teaching experiences and how I'd been looking for a teaching position in Norfolk. He said they had a teacher that had just resigned, and that's why the position opened. As we talked, he asked me if I could send him my resume, which is when I told him that I was on a trip with my youth group, and I was in Colorado for the Higher Things Conference. And I was not sure how I would be able to get him any of that information. Well, we continued to visit, and then I remembered that I had given my information to the public school there in Norfolk, and I told him maybe they would be able to send that to him somehow. Well, he thought it would be great if we could work that out, so I ended our conversation, and I sent a message to the principal at the Norfolk school. He replied to me that he was also out of town, but he would see what he can do. So here was a possible position, and it was time to pray and let God know that I would go anywhere he wanted me. I also reached out to my friend Heidi and let her know the new events. She told me that she could definitely see me teaching in a Lutheran school, and this may be exactly what God wanted for our family. The next day, about 10 o'clock, the email came through with my resume and letters of recommendation. So I forwarded those to Mr. Stortz, the principal at Christ Lutheran School, and let him know I would call him later that day. When I called him, we visited a little bit, and then he told me he wanted to set up an interview for Saturday. And I asked him, "Did I tell you that I'm in Colorado with a busload of kids? I am not really sure how that would work, but let me do some checking and I'll get back to you." And then I thought, wow, God, this is really happening. I will go where you send me. So I had to contact the bus driver to see if there would be any way that he could drop me off at Norfolk, Nebraska on his way back. However, this is another God thing. Thanks to a forgetful child, when we first got off the bus, I already had the driver's number. I'd already talked to the bus driver that week. So I was able to give him a call. And I asked him if he was planning to go through Norfolk on his way back to Minnesota. And he said that that was not really his plan, but he asked me why. And I told him that I could have a job interview Saturday morning if I could get there. And without hesitation, he said, "We will go that way." And I thought, God, this must be your plan. So when we departed Colorado late Friday morning, Seth and I put our luggage in a separate compartment, so when they stopped, they could just throw us off the bus, we could grab our stuff, and they could be back on their way. Chad was in Norfolk at that time, and he had planned to meet us at the truck stop. Well, we were told it would be like 10 o'clock. Miscalculation, it was 2 a.m. when we arrived. So he graciously slept in the car in the parking lot till we got there. But after a little sleep, I was getting ready for the interview, and the only clothes I had were capris and t-shirts. And Chad assured me that it wouldn't matter what I wore to the interview. He was certain they would want me to join their staff. So on Saturday, July 30th, I interviewed for a teaching position at Christ Lutheran School. That afternoon, as we drove back to Minnesota, I received the call and the confirmation that they wanted me at their school. 2 days prior to the date that we said would be our decision date back in May. Oh yeah, did I mention that in-service days started August 1st at that school? Well, God proved that he did not want our family to be apart that year. Things changed super crazy fast, and there was a lot of adjusting for all of us to do. But God was with us through it all. He even provided me with a teaching partner who helped me make the adjustment to teaching second grade and helping me have a senior because her daughter also was a senior at Lutheran High Northeast. When Pastor Ben asked me for a title for my message tonight, Chad said it should be Higher Things. Not only was that the name of the youth conference that we were attending, but I believe that God's ways are higher than my ways, and his thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Through the trials of my life, God has taught me to trust him. He will be there for us. We just have to trust and believe because he knows the plans he has for us. He has higher things in store for us, more than we can even imagine. Thank you.